chocolate, a crazy glittering mishmash of stuff, and a clueless blonde person? What do all these things have in common? Hello, welcome to the Christy Grace Scarlet Pen channel. I am an author, creativity chaser, and book lover. Today I'm doing part 3. Part 3! This is 6 now. In my series Classic Collection, where I watch movies that are classics or that I've heard of a lot and just never got around to watching. I evidently discovered recently that I haven't seen a lot. There's a lot of movies that people are like, I've seen that for, like, everybody's seen it, and I just never have. And so I sat down and decided to start watching some of them and give you my thoughts. This is part 3. I did 5, count it, 5 of these movies. And I'm going to talk to you about them today. I made notes. I made notes this time, so I'm going to refer to those a little bit, and that's why I have this in my hand. But otherwise, I'm going to tell you what I thought of these movies. I watched Blade Runner. What are my thoughts on this movie? I almost, like, Blade Runner, Harrison Ford. He's a little wishy-washy for me. Sometimes I like him, sometimes I don't. He was alright in this role. I didn't mind him. He did a good job. It's one of my favorites, actually, to see him in. Look. Oh. The premise and the dystopian society with, you know, humanoid androids. Wait, what are they called? Robots that look like human people, super advanced, but then it's his job to kill them because they're not actually allowed on the Earth anymore. It's against the law for these androids to be on the Earth because a lot of people have fled the planet and gone to other planets to recolonize. The world itself was really dark and dingy. I feel like the way... Look, this movie was made a while ago. What was it, 80s? Blade Runner came out in 82. Okay, that explains. That explains some of the visual effects. The actual story of Blade Runner, incidentally, in case you didn't know, is based on a book, and I've read the book and watched the movie, and they did it such a disservice. They could have done it so well, but unfortunately, they made it in the 80s. The tech wasn't as great as it is now, and because of that, the world just felt so drab, for lack of a better word. It was just so like, I just didn't enjoy the surroundings that these characters survived in. It was actually a pretty slow and boring movie, I found. There was a lot in this movie that just didn't make sense and came out of the blue, and it wasn't explained. And I think that if you read the book, you'd understand the references. But if you haven't read the book, which I haven't, and most people haven't, you didn't understand a lot of it. There was a lot of references that they made that just was so confusing. Like, why is this a thing? You never explained about this. Like, what? You can't just assume everyone's read the book. It's just so stupid. So that was annoying, and I didn't realize that that's why certain things were so confusing until I read the book after I'd seen the movie, and that was why things were just so utterly confusing, because they didn't explain it. They didn't explain half of what was going on. Like, yeah, you're introducing people to a brand new world where things are different, but you have to explain why. Like, in a movie, you can't just go, here it is, let's pretend you know everything about this world and not explain anything to you. That's not how these things should work. So that led to a lot of confusion for me. And to be perfectly honest with you, when you got to the last sort of 20 or so minutes of the movie, that was when things were the most action-packed, but they were pretty graphic. So some of it was pretty graphic. There was one moment when someone was killed, like by pushing in their eyes. I had to look away. That was so graphic. It was unbelievable. Like, this is the 80s. Like, why is this so dramatically graphic? So, I mean, yeah, there were a lot of low points for me for this guy, for Blade Runner, the film, that I think could have been done better, maybe from the sign of the times in the 80s. But I had to give this movie a 2 out of 5. It just didn't do it for me. It didn't cut it. I have to read my note here because it was so exactly how I thought. The next movie I watched was The Great Gatsby. This movie. So, the first half, are you ready? A crazy, glittering, confusing mishmash of half stories and a plot that didn't make a whole lot of sense. Which is exactly how I feel about it. It was craziness. It was like overstimulation of lights and fun and parties and flashing and lights, not flashing, but like, it was craziness. It was utter and a complete madness. Parties, drinking, doing it. I'm like, oh my gosh, like what is happening? And none of these stories made any sense. It had no real plot. There was no solid, like, a plot. It was all just lots of little bits and pieces. Like, I get that he's describing things that happened in his life to this therapist, and this is him looking back, but it just didn't make sense. There was no plot. There was nothing to follow. There was nothing to root for. Like, this character, and we're just seeing how he goes about his life. Like, there was nothing in here to hold on to and grasp until you got about halfway, and the second half of the movie turned into a star-crossed lovers relationship with, like, adultery and cheating on your spouses and, you know, treating each other like crap. And it was just, at least that part had a plot, but it also sucked. It was a sucky plot. Again, this is based on a book, so I don't know if it translated very well from movie to book, but from book to movie. But I don't know, I feel like Baz Luhrmann's stuff can sometimes be somewhat crazy and out there. But yeah, this was just a huge mishmash of stuff that didn't make sense, that I just, like, why, you know, I just didn't enjoy it, and it was really confusing, and the characters I couldn't grasp onto. I didn't enjoy any of them. They sucked. So, you know what? Just a 2 popcorns out of 5. It was not my movie. The next movie that I watched was Chocolat, which incidentally had Johnny Depp in it. I like some Johnny Depp's movies. Some. I liked him in 21 Jump Street when he was young and, you know, he was playing a cop going undercover. That was my favorite. There are some movies I love of his. I like Nick of Time, but he also plays a normal person. Is there a theme here? But I also like The Lone Ranger, so he was in that too. But this movie, Chocolat, wasn't even really about him at all. He only had probably half an hour screen time, and that was it. Like, yeah, I watched the movie half because I've heard it before and it's supposed to be, you know, a good movie, and the other half was because of him, and he was barely in it. So, putting that aside though, the movie itself was boring. It was really slow. I didn't... How do I describe my thoughts for this movie? One element of this film that I didn't enjoy is that I get frustrated when Catholics or Christians get this huge stereotype thrown, and it's actually not what all Catholics or Christians are like at all. In fact, it's not what most of them are like. It's just what the loud ones are like, and it's really annoying that the loud set of a group that you identify with, whether that's Christians, whether that's an ethnicity, whether that's whatever it is, like there's a loud group of those people who tend to be the loudest, are also the dodgiest, and unfortunately Catholics, Christians, you know, all sorts, even like Muslims, like there is the loudest section of those places are the ones that get stereotyped and the ones that people actually think we're all like. Not all Christians are like what you see in a movie, not all Catholics are like what you see in a movie, yet that's what we get. So this movie was a clear Catholic stereotype. Yes, some people are still like that, and yes, some people were like that, you know, a while ago, and that they were like that to a certain extent. Not all of them though, and it's frustrating to see that. And I feel like only the horrible stereotypes for Christians, for Catholics, for those sorts of things, only the horrible stereotypes are ever used in movies, and I don't think that's fair, and people don't seem to care about that. They care if their group that they identify with is given the bad stereotype, but not the Christian group. They don't care about that because I suppose they think we all deserve it. But regardless of that, I got frustrated. I'm not a Catholic, but I know that not all Catholics are like that. They're not. So it frustrated me to see this side of a community which, yeah, it was in Europe, so things I'm assuming are different in Europe. I don't live there, I'm not European, but that was really irritating, and that often pulled me out of the story because I was so frustrated by the reactions of some of these people who were Catholics, and then also the story progression for this. Anyway, look, that was one element that was hugely irritating for me, and it sort of disengaged me from the story because it was so utterly ridiculous. Christian or faith-believing people are not all like that, and that's annoying. So, yeah. Look, anyway, besides that point, like I said, it was slow, it was boring. For me, it was... The characters weren't interesting enough to get 20 minutes on one character and how you're changing their individual life to then move on to the next one. It wasn't great. So I'm sorry, but this one was like a one popcorn out of 5. It just, there were a lot wrong for this. There was a lot wrong in this movie for me. I don't know why I'm not ending on this movie and I'm putting it before the last one. This movie made me want to cry that I wasted my life. Oh, I wasted my life on this movie. I'm not kidding. So I've heard of this movie before and I've heard that it could be stupid and I've heard that not everybody likes it because it's kind of silly. But I was hoping that it would be a silly I could get behind because I don't mind a silly movie. I actually enjoy Ace Ventura movies, so I don't mind silly. This was next level. I watched Wayne's World. Oh my gosh. I wasted my life. I just put that out there. I wasted my life with this movie, honestly. I feel like after I watched this movie, I had to sit back and say, what am I doing with my life right now that I'm watching this on purpose? And I watched all the way to the end, for heaven's sake. Only for the sake of this video. If I wasn't watching it for this video, I would have given up like way early, like 10 minutes in, I think. Oh my gosh. The way that these guys talked was the most irritating thing on the planet. Like, shut up. I just wanted them to sew their mouths shut like Wade in the X-Men. Like, honestly, shut up. Like, I just couldn't. It was hard to listen to what they were saying because they were saying it in such a dumb way. People don't really talk like that. Most people, anyway. The direct-to-camera breaking the fourth wall was so weird. Like, I like when movies do that occasionally, or even like a TV show or whatever. I like that sometimes, that effect. Deadpool does it in they do a really good job of it in Deadpool, but this was not done well. This was weird, out of place, felt like they were taking a camera around on a reality show, and there's like, look at my life over here, but it was so dumb. And I get that a lot of this movie was satire, and a lot of this movie was supposed to be poking fun at some of these things, and I do understand that. As I watched the movie, I'm like, I can see what you're going for. It just didn't translate for me. It didn't work for me. It was annoying. Some of the scenes that they put in here really just felt like they were trying to fill time. They had nothing to do with the story or the character. Like, they were just filling time. I feel like they could have shortened scenes and it would have just been just as interesting, but they just seemed to extend something that didn't need to be extended for some reason, for no reason. So there was actually some decent satire in here, but it was wrapped up in such ridiculousness, utter ridiculousness, that it wasn't worth. They could have done it without being so ridiculous and so dumb. I think that if they had a little bit less silly stupidness and sort of made it that little bit less degree of stupid, it would have been relatively good. Like, they poked fun at some really great stuff. Like, for example, Gallivant. I loved Gallivant. And that was like a small, short TV show which had 2 seasons, and it was a musical comedy show which poked fun and did a lot of satires, poked fun at all of these stereotypes of like these, you know, quest movies and whatever, and like they poked fun at a lot and they had a lot of fun with it, but they didn't do it in such a stupid, ridiculous silliness way like Wayne's World did that it was annoying. So it was funny over that line of silly funniness to absolutely so ridiculous I can't watch. That movie got a 0.5 popcorn. The last movie that I watched was something that I had heard a lot about all the time, especially with girls. I hear about it all the time and realized I had never watched it. There was a reason, let me tell you in advance. And it was Clueless. This is a classic 90s chick flick. Classic, okay? So, some of it was decent, and because it was that 90s chick flick vibe, it was standard, you know, so here and there. I did have some notes though. It was relatively cringy through the whole thing. It was really cringy. There were so many actors in that movie that I didn't know were in it, and it was so fun to see them. I didn't watch a trailer because I sort of had an idea of what it was about, so I actually had no clue who was in it. I love Paul Rudd. He's so much fun. So I didn't know that all these actors that I knew were in this movie. That was fun to discover. That happens to me a lot. They were all clearly adults. Some movies you're like, oh, you're probably an adult, but I feel like you can get away with playing a teenager in high school. These guys were not that. These were clearly like, you should be in college, not high school. Like, there's no way. You're way too old. You don't look like a teenager. That was annoying and pulled me out of the story. I was genuinely surprised, like, even for the 90s, like, genuinely shocked, right? There was such an apathy and casuality with drug use in this film. It was so casually addressed, like, oh yeah, we'll just do drugs. I'm like, honestly, I was at a lack for words. I'm like, are you serious? Like, that's how you're handling drug use in this film? There was such apathy against it. It was like, oh yeah, I'll just do drugs. You know, oh yeah, she offered me this, and oh yeah, we'll just do that. Oh yeah, we'll just have it. Like, what is going on? You can't do that. Like, teenagers watching that, especially in the 90s, people are very easily influenced, and treating drug use like it's no big deal is not okay. I know that since that movie came out, there's been legalization of marijuana and things like that, but you can't just give someone, you know, potentially laced drugs at a party and just be like, cool. No! Just the utter casuality in dealing with this drug situation was awful. The only thing that saved that part of it for me was that it wasn't hugely referenced. It was probably only 2 or 3 parts when drugs were even referenced or used on camera. And it wasn't hard drugs as well. So I should put that out there. It wasn't hard drugs, but still, like, dealing with the teenagers shouldn't be doing drugs at all. And even if it is, you know, even if there is a valid reason for using legalized marijuana, it's medicinal. It's not supposed to be the really addictive type that you can get on the street or like whatever. Like, silly to say that. It was so cliche. It was so just a cliche classic 90s chick flick, you know. She's ditzy, but not really. Or, oh, she needs to get a makeover and then all of a sudden she's really pretty, but really she was pretty to begin with. Like, oh no, I've created a monster, but not really because we're all friends in the end. Like, it was just cliched classic 90s, you know. Overall, I think I gave Clueless 3 popcorns out of 5. It was okay, and parts of it was kind of funny, and some of it was not. Cringy, but it was okay. I wouldn't particularly choose to watch it ever again. Have you seen any of those movies? Did you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments. Or if you have another classic movie that you think I maybe haven't watched but need to, suggest them down below as well. There are still some other really classic movies that I have on my list and I just haven't got around to yet, so I am hopefully gonna be able to do some more of these classic collection videos. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the adventures.